Have you ever broken up with someone and had them go full crazy on you as a result? I broke up with him because I'd asked him to stop screaming at me in public when he was angry, and he wouldn't. Now he tells anyone on Reddit who will listen that I'm a sociopath. Well then fricked him. I broke up with my high school girlfriend after she cheated on me with one of her close family friends. She was upset because she said she was just helping him through his breakup. Subsequently, she sent me detailed Facebook message about how she asked her friends to each spit on me at my senior prom. She also wrote on some of my female friends' walls with her Facebook profile and quoted me for the mean things she said. Upon breaking up with my crazy, emotionally abusive ex-boyfriend, we were having a screaming match in the apartment we lived in together. In a fit of rage he grabbed a strip of photos of the two of us that we took on the boardwalk in one of those photo booth thingies. He tries to tear the photos apart, but they wouldn't rip because of the laminate that covers them. This makes him even angrier, and he grabs a lighter, with the hopes of the photos going up in flames, as he dangles it over our bed. But, with the photos being laminated and all, they just slowly started to melt. He is furious and I am trying to contain my laughter, as it is completely absurd how hard he is trying to destroy these photos of us. Then the fire detector went off. Finally, one that made me LOL. I'm glad you thought it was funny too. Yes. When we were together he drew a picture of me. It was ugly. I hated it. We had a massive argument. Not about the picture, which I thought was the end of us. So I threw the picture out. We made up. He discovered I'd thrown out the picture. He started going mad and throwing anything he could grab at me. Plates, plants, vases, etc. Then he left. I thought that would be the end because it was such a scary outburst, but no. Here's a snippet of the next few months. Constant mystery phone calls from people who would insult my appearance. Sometimes whole groups of people singing about how ugly I was. He showed up at the same gig as me and threatened me for daring to be in the same room as him. He raised his fist to me before being dragged away by a random passerby. Thank you whoever you are. After calling the police on him and them cautioning him for harassment, he photoshopped a picture of my number calling his phone and told the police it was me harassing him. He started telling people about his plans to kill me. One girl I didn't know was so worried about me she tracked down my details through mutual friends and called me. She could go into huge detail about my flat and all the escape routes I could use and how he was going to block them all off. Apparently he wanted to keep my eyeballs for trophies. 4 years later, he still shows up on certain websites asking for nudes of me. A 1, a 2, or 3. Do-wop, do-wop do, do-wop, do-wop. You have hairy man lips. Click. I broke up with the girlfriend I had for about a week during the summer. Mind you, I didn't really know her that well, which is the reason I broke up. We were moving too fast. She reacted to the breakup by using some kind of karate move to get me on the ground, then held me there for about 20 minutes while she screamed random crap at me. Then she turned me around, pulled down my trousers and spit on my dong. She then licked it up and left. I still have no idea what the frick happened. Yeah, I broke up with this guy once over the phone and he completely ignored me and said, "You didn't say that. You need to come and say it to my face. If you do that, I'll believe you." Okay, so I went to his house and broke up with him a second time. It took him about 10 minutes of trying to convince me before he let me leave. Right when I left, the calls and texts started happening. I purposely ignored 50 of his calls within 20 minutes and received countless texts. But the kicker was, he left me a voicemail that sounded like he was dying. He was making weird gasping sounds as he was crying on the message while saying stuff like, "Oh God, I'm dying. I can't breathe. Help me. I drank beer on my pills and I'm dying. You need to come back. You can only save me." See, he was a major binge drinker. He didn't drink all the time, but when he did, he would drink like 20 beers in one night. To stop him from drinking so much, he got these pills that make people feel horrible if they drink beer. I think it's one of those ways to cure alcoholism, but I'm not sure. After that voicemail, I got a text that read something like, "I know where you live and I'm going to personally come and speak to your father about this. And if things don't go my way, well, you've been warned." He never did show up, but man, that guy was a drama queen. Long time lurker just found his thread. Back when more blood flowed to my nethers than my brain. I dated some crazy. I was 20. She was 18. I had just moved into my first apartment alone. An old Victorian home converted into a quadruplex. So, it had 14-foot ceilings and big windows that spanned the walls. The breakup itself wasn't too bad, if I recall correctly. Some crying, sadness, and angry words. It was later that she went psycho. About a week later, she stopped by for some things she left. I gave them to her and went to go get lunch. While I was gone, she broke into the apartment and trashed the place. The carnage. She broke 23 panes of glass with her bare hands. I knew because of the blood everywhere. She smashed my computer and microwaved all my 3.5 floppy disks. She overturned my TV and dressers, but not before strewing my clothes everywhere. She broke most of my dishes. She overturned my futon. Yes, I was in the futon of shame stage in life. All of this was to prepare for the icing on the cake. She set off a fire extinguisher, covering everything in a winter wonderland of flame retardant dust. Before leaving, she tacked a calling card to the wall, a picture of a place special to us as a couple. It had her blood on it. When the mustachioed cop came to investigate, he looked around at the devastation and said, "What did you do to pee her off?" Her family called and convinced me to not press charges. She was found with all of her clothes stuffed into her car, attempting to skip town. Her father repaired all the windows and made her spend the next couple days cleaning everything up. During that time, in my infinite wisdom at that age, I reinserted my dong in crazy for some awesome breakup sex. TL, DR, X shatters, splatters, tatters, scatters, and Rex tech. Doesn't matter, had sex. You went full retard at the end there. When my ex and I broke up, he wrote me a book. One day, a full-on hard copy book arrived in the mail. Just like, things about me, funny stories from when we dated, pictures, some he drew, etc. I could barely read it, but by the time I got 2/3 through the book, the page just simply read, "I freaking love you. Come back to me now or the rest of my life will just be an attempt at second best." I went to his wedding a few years later. He still seems miserable. Yep, twice. The first time was my first boyfriend. I broke up with him and he proceeded to harass me for 3 months. Phone calls, texts, FB, showing up places I was. The second was an abusive BF. When I finally broke up with him, he chucked a tantrum of epic proportion. Told everyone I cheated on him, was pregnant by some other guy. Then a couple months later was convinced I was hacking into his FB. Total nutter. Does breaking up with a friend count? I lived with a friend of mine in a dorm in college. She was basically the kind of person who was passive aggressive in every way. She got mad at me for no reason, and she was clingy to the point that she cried if I went off to do anything out of the room. I spent time alone with my boyfriend at the time because she didn't like being alone. Needless to say, it was a really toxic environment. So I told her I was done and I was moving out. Cue the shouting matches, followed by the freaky texts where she kept calling me names and demanding an apology. She tried to turn everyone she knew at the small university we attended against me, so I got glares and stuff from people I'd never even seen before. She posted a lot of crazy and untrue things about me on Facebook. I was basically silent on the whole thing. I only talked to very close friends about the ordeal, and none of it on my end went on any social media accounts. She got her boyfriend in on it, too, and had him texting me the same stuff she was texting me, calling me names, trying to make me make up with her, all kinds of things like that. I eventually threatened to turn them both in for harassment if I got any more texts, emails, messages, Facebook crap from them, and they left me alone. Yes, I tried the "it's not you, it is me" 7 or 8 times. The last time after the tears and garment rending, she asked me to marry her. I wasn't getting through. The only calm, successful breakup that I remember, I took her to the fanciest restaurant in the city, asked for a table in the middle of the room to cut down on the tears and hysteria. I told her that I was not happy in our relationship and that it was over. She calmly said, "Okay," and then ordered her meal. I walked into the room and calmly started to explain how I think we should call it quits and move on. She immediately started crying before I could get the third word in and pleading that I don't go. It was rough, but that's when she pulled the "I'm pregnant" on me. I told her to get in the car and we went to get a pregnancy test from CVS. Went back home, told her to go to the bathroom and we'll see. Trust me, there was plenty of drama and fits during that trip. She was taking forever in the bathroom and that's when I heard running water. She was trying to make a false positive. I opened the door and told her she had by Sunday to move out. Been single ever since. When I was a freshman in college, I started dating a guy who went to a different college. We saw each other pretty often. Life was good. We dated all through my sophomore year as well and then lived together that summer in LA, his hometown. Then I went off for my junior year abroad in Hong Kong while he decided to drop out of college and move back in with his parents in LA. About a month into my year abroad, he called me up and started ranting at great length about Jesus, which was weird because he was an atheist who was raised Jewish. It was pretty obvious to me that he was high as frick, as he was making no sense at all. After a couple more higher than the stratosphere international phone calls, I told him we were through, as I had no interest in being in a relationship with an insane drug addict. Shortly thereafter, his sister calls me in a panic saying that he has disappeared and nobody knows where he went. They think he's suffered a psychotic break. Eventually they find him, though, and get him into treatment, and he leaves me alone from that point forward. Cut to several months into my senior year of college, over a year since Crazy and I broke up. One night, I'm out on a date when my phone starts blowing up with texts. There's a text coming in every few seconds, spouting absolute meaningless nonsense, calling me chicken shit over and over, saying things like it's all about the size of the dong. Isn't it? He was obsessed with penis size, and apparently believed it was literally the only thing that mattered to women. The psycho texting went on for hours, with hundreds and hundreds of texts coming in, until I finally called his mother and straight up tattled on him. I told her to get her son under control before I got the police involved. The texting stopped. A few weeks later, it happened again, and again I tattled to his mom. I think I have seen chicken shit misspelled every possible way by now. It has now been over 7 years since we broke up, and he still texts me every few months to tell me I'm chicken shit and to insist that penis size is what made me stop loving him. He's certified freaking insane. Also, he didn't have a small penis or anything. Not huge, but well within normal range. So I have no idea why he has such a complex about it. Freaking nutcase. I would get one of those disposable phones and blow up his inbox with pictures of horses' penises. I invited her over to my flat and tried to break up once, only to find out as I launched into the carefully prepared spiel that her parents had filed for divorce that morning. She descended into hysterics long before I could make it clear I was ending it. Frick. Being a kind-hearted guy total P, I shelved the breakup for 4 months before the same issues drove me to try again. We had both just moved back into town for a new year of college and hadn't yet visited each other's homes, so this time, being a 19-year-old coward, I arranged for us to be in a bar so she couldn't make too much of a scene and I could get away clean. She took it surprisingly well, all things considered, not even crying really. She accepted what I said, but asked that we stay friends. I readily agreed. She then said that her housemates weren't arriving back in town till the next day, and she had no plans all day but didn't want to be alone. Would I mind coming round and she could show me her new house anyway, and it would keep her mind off it. I stupidly agreed. She didn't seem too upset. The walk was about 20 minutes and as we got closer and closer her pace got slower and slower. By the time we reached her road she was shuffling, and the waterworks began. I managed to get her inside, and when I turned to put the kettle on for some tea, old school English emotion management skills, I turned back to find, without stopping bawling, she had stripped all of her clothes off. She made a frankly pretty pathetic attempt to turn me on while smeared in tears. Frick. I managed to bat her advances away and tried to walk to the front door. Noticing abnormal resistance, I looked down to find she was clinging to my legs, lying naked and bawling on the floor begging me not to go. Fast forward about 15 minutes and I'd managed to get her up to her room and calmed her down a bit. No, I did not go for sexy times. I'm not that stupid evil. I said that I'd check in on her the next day, kissed her on the forehead, said goodbye and went downstairs to the door. Locked from the inside. No key. Frick. I turn around and she has moved to sitting on the top step of the stairs, still crying fully. In between sobs she cries, "You can't leave me. I won't let you leave me." It takes me another 3 hours of trying to calm her down and get her to give me the key before I gave up and searched for another out of this house. Terraced, no backyard, locked back door, all downstairs windows nailed shut, before I find an open upstairs window and let myself out by the drain pipe. My 2 buddies had been in the pub next door to the bar I originally tried to break up in waiting for me. I'd completely forgotten about them. Being absolute true friends, they were still there when I got back, 4 or so hours after I'd left them, propping up the bar and waiting for me with a pint of porter, which at room temp was perfect. My husband decided to leave, but I filed for divorce because I knew he'd never get around to it because 1, it required effort, and 2, it would mean that eventually he'd have to start paying his own medical bills. So in that respect I broke up with him. He tried to have me arrested, he reported me to CPS, he left vulgar, hate-filled voicemails for me. He called me dozens of times a day saying terrible things to me and about my family. Things that were criminal and completely untrue. He tried to take my car and my house and the kids and the furniture and my computer. And through all this, he kept up a facade of complete normalcy to everyone he knew, and blogged about what a terrible person. So yeah, I'd say so. Oh, also he was mad that I would not continue to pay his car insurance, phone bill, and electronic toll car pass, even though I gave him 30 days to change them to his name, which I thought was pretty fair. I didn't just cut it off immediately. Was dating a girl in HS. Told me God told her in a dream that he had plans for her, and that I was holding her back. Kind of came out of left field, and I was pretty hurt over it, but whatever. A couple days later, her friends asked me what the heck was going on with her. All said she was talking to herself and acting really odd. Find out later on, over the next couple months and years, she had a full mental breakdown and went from preacher's little girl to full-on nympho. Would blow anyone who would drop their pants. And if she could get 20 minutes of semi-privacy. BC, honestly, how much privacy are you gonna get in an old F-150 farm truck sitting in a parking lot? She would frick them. Didn't matter who it was. She took the opportunity and did it. When her dad, the preacher, found out about it, he found her gigantic box of toys and pee hiding in her closet, not through the town gossip mongers about what his daughter had been up to. He tried to exorcise her, as in expel the demons, which apparently caused another breakdown. BC, she went back to super uptight preacher's daughter, lost track of her for a little while, then heard that she had run away, joined a Christian cult, and was now pumping out 1 kid almost every year between 2 or 3 husbands. Exorcise. I broke up with a girl who went full emo psycho on me. Allow me to preface this by saying that she was a bright and bubbly redhead with quite an uplifting personality. Things went pretty well at the start, but she was constantly calling me and asking me where I was going, who I'd be with, why wasn't she seeing me more. Of course, my young high school-esque brain was really not super interested in building a long-term relationship with her, outside of getting past second base. So once the clinginess reached its peak with me, I broke it off, and then I went out to my car a few mornings after the breakup to a note that said "You are beautiful" in dark black marker, taped to my car, and a rose that had long since died. Thinking it was a lame prank, I confronted a few friends, and they said that it wasn't any of them, but XGF had been acting a little strange lately. She apparently dyed her hair pitch black, and over the course of the next few weeks, would complete the full transformation from young and sweet to dark and creepy. I would continue to receive creepy messages once a week or so, complete with dead roses, until one day she just walked into my ROTC class with a full-on morning dress, compelled with veil, handed me an entire dozen dead roses and said, "I brought you some roses. I'll leave you be now. MFW. Oh. Actually, out of all of them, this one sounds the most overdramatic, emotional teenager to me. I kind of imagine her now as a well-adjusted young woman who has an amazingly funny self-deprecating story to tell at parties." Sorry for doing the classic AskReddit thing. Not me, but one of my best friends had this happen. We're in college, He had this good looking GF who we kinda figured out a few months in was pretty crazy. The type where every time you go out something happens, where she ended up making a scene or being in a fight with somebody, usually him. So one day he goes to her house and does the "we gotta talk" thing. Now, this was fairly late at night, around 11 PM or so. Calmly breaks up with her. She's not having it, starts crying, screaming, calling him names, telling him she won't freaking stand for it. Now here's where it gets crazy. He takes off and heads towards his dad's house, where he lived at the time. Halfway there he notices her behind him in her car. She's calling his phone over and over, but he ignores her. He makes a bunch of moves to try to shake her like some sort of action movie, but she's running red lights and cutting people off and crap to keep up with him. Finally he gets to his dad's and they have this big fight in the street. At this point he's pissed, so he gets a little more direct. "Frick you, we're over. If you don't quit stalking me, I'm calling the police." An hour more of fighting and rehashing every part of their relationship, and she finally leaves. Now past midnight, he goes to bed. His room was in the basement and he's lying there when suddenly she wakes him up tapping on the window. She eventually actually kicks it in and starts to come in his house. The house alarm goes off and his dad wakes up and finally goes nuts on her. They call the police off, but his dad screamed at her and she finally went home. End of story. I knew a guy who had something very similar happen, except the next day she sent him flowers and an apology, then flipped out again when he wouldn't take her back. I think I'm the one that went a little crazy when my ex-GF broke up with me. I didn't do anything that nuts, but I definitely look back and see how many things I did that were unnecessarily guilt-provoking and self-pitying. Been there. This guy broke up with me in college. I was devastated. 6 months later, he starts stalking me. He leaves a dough head on the windshield of my car during finals week. I call the cops. A manhunt starts. He denies all of it. Fast forward 10 years later, I never found out why he was stalking me, but he did finally admit to doing that. Hey, it's been forever. Remember that dough head on your windshield? Yeah, my fault. Welp, I'll see you sooner than you think. Yes. Basically we were colleagues and the guy was getting near 30, yet I was his first real relationship in a decade. And after about 6 months I realized it wasn't going to work out. Guy proceeded to flip out because he'd rather I'd have broken up with him, not face to face or some such. Because every breakup is perfectly executed, am I right? And kept sending me emails analyzing every situation during our relationship in which I may have not acted in a flattering light. This continued for over 6 months. He'd do stuff like threaten that we couldn't be friends anymore if I didn't apologize for this or that, or kept trying to dictate ways I was doing things and the like, even threatening work related stuff in an attempt to get me to answer. Basically, there were some work related emails I did have to respond to, otherwise I would have just blocked him, but I never acknowledged any of the crazy ones. Oh, and along the way, he kept emailing me helpful things about my work that were clearly him trying to inject himself into my stuff, but in such a way that I was the crazy one if I thought he was doing this. Basically, a crap ton of gaslighting like you wouldn't believe, about both my personal and professional life. In hindsight, I probably should have told my advisor what was going on, but it would have been really awful for everyone involved to get into that, and honestly I was kinda embarrassed about being involved in the entire thing. Finally one night when he tried to undermine me yet again in the collaboration, and I came home from a work dinner a little tipsy, seeing what he'd done yet again, I sent him an email saying just because I'd broken his heart it didn't mean he had an excuse to be a jerk for the rest of his life to me, and that toned things down once he realized I might report him. But all in all, yeah, I haven't had a boyfriend since, and sure as heck will never consider a colleague again. Yeah, he abducted me from my parents' house and put me in the trunk of his car, ended in a high-speed police pursuit and we crashed into a tree. I have the full story posted in my comments if anyone cares enough to look. Just sort by top. Yep, when I was 16 I broke up with my first serious girlfriend. She went ballistic, called my house at 2 AM, screaming that she'd kill herself unless I came to her house and made up with her. I didn't because I didn't think she'd actually kill herself and my mom wouldn't let me go, but I was really shaken. 2 weeks after that, she called me and I answered because she wasn't screaming. She told me she was pregnant. I thought I was going to be a dad at 16. Set everything else aside and told her I'd be there for her. She wasn't pregnant. She did end up getting pregnant at 19 and having a kid though. Pretty wild. We only dated 3 months. There were red flags, but I was 14 and didn't know better. He would pressure me for sex when I didn't want it, and when I finally was gonna try breaking up in person he choked me until I took I back. Then I broke up with him over the phone the next day. He would text and call constantly. He sent me random dong pics. He threatened to kill me and once said, "I will burn the house down with you and your family inside." The most ridiculous thing he did was when he made a character on his WWE game that looked like me, and one that looked like him, and he recorded his character beating me up on the game, and posted it on YouTube. The title was me beating up my BXGF and put my cell number in the description and told people to frick with me. He stayed obsessed with me for at least 2 years. I learned how to block his number though. His other exes after me said that even while they were dating all he would talk about is me, and I've heard he'd been abusive to other girls as well. That is downright scary. Yes, to put this in context, we had a joke about ring pulls apparently being tokens for kisses, hugs, whatever, depending on the state of the ring pull. So after we break up, I get sent a CD she'd made for me. It was basically a very creepy CD of music that is either about killing yourself or about dying because someone's not with you. Then, a few months later, she sent a stuffed toy with several hundred ring pulls around its neck. Yeah, he walked 30-ish miles to my house in the middle of the night to beg for me back and to ask if I had slept with my new boyfriend yet. Yep. Dated a girl in college for a few months. She cheated on me, so I broke up with her. She was completely insane. Like, actually mentally ill. Must have run in the family. Her mom was a hoarder and was chronically unemployed. Her dad left them when she was 15. And her sister had 3 kids out of wedlock before her 18th birthday. After I broke up with her, she went off the rails. She started dating some weird dude and started telling him completely false stories about me. I didn't really care until she told him that I raped her. Completely untrue. He decided to come after me and teach me a lesson, and I'm in the National Guard, buddy. I know how to frick you up. I shrugged it off. One night I was going with my roommate to McDonald's to grab some milkshakes after we hit the gym, and when we got out of the car, we discovered this dude had been following us. He got out and confronted us. He took a swing at me almost immediately and punched me square in the face. I broke his nose. I was wearing my class ring from high school, and then my roommate, a very muscular, very Italian water polo player, completely knocked the dude out. We got the frick out of there immediately. A week later, she cheated on him and told her new guy that he had raped her. Freaking insane. Fast forward 4 years, she got fat, got pregnant, had a baby, and then the daddy left her before the baby was born. Guess who currently has rape allegations against him? Ugh, yes. I broke up with him, and like a week later I come home late from work and he's parked in front of my house. Completely refuses to leave, saying he wants to talk to my parents and tell them about all the guys I was sleeping with. I wasn't doing anything of the sort. Finally leaves after like an hour of me saying they aren't home and don't want to talk to him anyways. Found out he was in my room, and my brother had kicked him out when he noticed. That was when HR waited for me. Sent me hundreds of emails, texts, letters. Those were dropped off on my doorstep, instead of being, I don't know, mailed. Every day for a year. Constantly stalked me on social media, even going as far as creating more accounts whenever I blocked him. Also tried adding several of my friends. Threatened to beat up my best friend and my newso. Emails sent to get my attention. He thinks he's gay. Could I ask my best friend, who is gay, for advice? Went on a date with a guy apparently and went into full detail about everything. Said he had schizophrenia. Said he was suicidal. There was a point where in the span of 2 days, he sent 5-6 emails that went from I love you to you're a B, I hate you and back. The last one actually switched between both sentiments several times. Ended every letter and email with love, name, regardless of whether or not he was just telling me I was a horrible person. Oh, and also said it was going to be the last time he was going to contact me. Every single time. He stopped completely after a year when he found out I was pregnant. It's been over 2 years since then. I still don't know how he found out. More often than not, I went to a competitive Catholic prep school. Dating those girls is a 50/50 shot of sticking your dong in crazy. I would say most rivals stage a 5 clinger. I had 6 girlfriends in high school. 2 threatened suicide if I left. 1 went nuts and trashed a classroom and the other smashed a $2,000 musical instrument. The other 2 were sane thankfully. That's 60/40. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.